Okay, so welcome to our October Development Activities meeting. If this is your first time joining us and you want to learn more about the Southside Community Council as a registered community organization and the DAM process, please visit our website at southsidecommunitycouncil.org. Before we begin our presentations, and you can see that there are four. Stephanie Joy Everett with City Planning will explain how to participate. We will then have our four projects presented, and then we'll go into next steps. So Stephanie.
Actually, I'm going to be handling that part tonight, so Stephanie Joy can take notes on the projects.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Phil.
So yeah, thanks, Barbara. Good evening, everyone. I'm Philip Wu. I'm with the Department of City Planning. And as Barbara mentioned, I'll be going over some housekeeping items on how to participate in tonight's development activities meeting. So first, if anyone has any technical issues or needs any assistance with the Zoom platform, please use the chat feature, and I'll be monitoring that. After each presentation, if folks have questions for the presenters tonight, please use the Q&A tool to type out your question or comment. Or if you would like to ask your question out loud, you can tap the raise hand button. If you're calling in by phone, you're going to want to press *9 to raise your hand, and I will announce the last 4 digits of your phone number when we're ready to unmute you. For our presenters tonight, we ask that you be mindful of anyone who may be on their phones or who might not, be in front of their computers or have the presentation in front of them, and to try your best to describe what's on each of your slides. And lastly, we are recording this meeting for the Southside Community Council to post online later if so desired. And with that, I think we can get started. Looks like our first presentation is from Heather of Integrity Design on behalf of Dollar Bank at 1712 East Carson. And Heather, would you like to share your screen?
Yes, I would. I'm going. Is it okay to start?
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you for inviting us. Michelle from Dollar Bank is also on the call. And what we are doing is we're coming back to you. We initially presented, probably 6 months ago for the relocation of the ATM machine that currently is located in this area here. We received approval to relocate the ATM down into this window here. When I went back to plan review, they asked us to provide details for the new entrance that we would be putting in where the ATM is coming out. Currently, Dollar Bank occupies all of this storefront. As part of the work that we're doing, we're reducing the size of the floor plan. So therefore, these 4 windows will now be in a future tenant space. So therefore, we needed to incorporate the entry into their space as part of our project. Initially, that entry was going to be provided and designed by the landlord. So that's why we did not submit it on our first review. But since then, the scope of work has changed, and now that entrance is falling back onto Dollar Bank's scope of work. So that's an overview of the front of the building. Currently, this is the image of the entrance that takes you into the building. Not only into Dollar Bank space, but into the other tenants that occupy the first floor of the building, which is outside of our scope, but I wanted to pull this up so you could get a sense of what the other entrance on the street currently looks like. From a drawing standpoint, that entrance that I just showed you is reflected here. This is the window placement for our ATM. And then here is the entrance for the new tenant space. So it is our goal to take out the window and the curb below in its entirety and then fill back in with a aluminum and glass storefront. Michelle went down to the space today to select an anodized aluminum color that would match the framework that exists on the building. So our request is fairly simple. It's really just, we're not doing any work to any of the elements that you see around the glass or any of the keystones. We're really just taking out a full window and replacing it with a usable entrance door to be able to access a future tenant space. And that is pretty much our scope of work. Are there any questions?
Can you clarify what board you're going to and what you're seeking?
Say that again, please.
Can you clarify which city board you're going to for approvals?
Oh, okay. So we have already submitted to plan review. And they came back and asked us to go back to Southside Design Review Committee. And then additionally, because it's in a historical block, then what we have to do is once Southside looks at it and approves it, then it has to go and the historical committee looks at it. And we've been through this process to actually relocate the ATM to this location and have approval from both of those committees.
Quaylen, you have a question and you can ask it.
Okay, thanks. I thought I had heard him say use the chat, but it could have been for something else. Will the new door look similar to the door that's right underneath 1712?
Well, what we're doing, and I'll pull that picture back up.
Thank you.
So you can see that this is really a very simple storefront.
Right. Okay.
I don't know when this hardware was applied. So what we would do is, yes, the basic framework would be equal to this door, but the hardware itself would need to be more current and meet today's, compliance standards. But in technically it would look like a single use door versus the double like what we see here.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think Jackie has her hand up.
Hi, thanks, Barb. Going back to the ATM, you're
Yes.
moving the ATM, correct?
Correct.
Are you moving both the current machine and the existing surround that has that signage above as you see today? Or are we going to have a new ATM and a new ATM surround installed?
It will be a new surround. And this, Michelle will have to answer whether it is this exact machine that's getting relocated, or one that is similar to it.
I would
It is.
Sorry, go ahead.
Apologies. It is, I can confirm it is the same ATM that is just moving down to the opposite window.
And the colorway of the surround is going to stay that sort of same buffy color that it looks like precast is above it?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
And what about signage and branding?
So actually, Dollar Bank recently rebranded, and so there may be some minor changes in the signage and branding, but it won't be anything that's on the outside exterior facade.
But it still will be signage and branding.
It's
There
still-
will just,
Yeah.
it'll
There'll be a
just,
sign. Yeah.
yeah, it'll say ATM and there will be an updated Dollar Bank logo.
Okay. I don't know if anyone on the call that can reference the historic district guidelines has any questions about that. You're probably better versed than I am in the signage portion. But I just wanted to bring that up to see if someone had any comments on it. And the last thing is the lighting at the ATM. Is that being brought up to the current foot candle requirements by code?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So this is Jody from the local review committee. I think Bob Russ isn't on the call yet. We've reviewed this project, the ATM specifically, a couple of times in the past and have approved or agreed with all the moves that Dollar Bank has been making. If the signage was to be modified, I believe we would need to review it, but ultimately it would come down to the city as well to make sure it conforms with the signage guidelines in the historic district.
Yeah, that was my point of bringing it up, because you never know in a retail location, not to say that you guys would do this, but who's to say you don't come back and put some giant super graphic on that infill around the ATM, for instance.
And understand. And the permanent signage, I'll call it permanent. It's the Dollar Bank signs that are currently on the building. And those were permanent. Those are all going to stay
Correct.
in their current location and current style, and all of the lighting that's on the building currently will stay. The only change will be the security light at the actual ATM machine.
This is Quaylin. So the Dollar Bank logo is essentially going to be just an updated logo, but will the size of it remain the same on the ATM?
Correct. That's what I was going to add next, is that in this, if you see where it says ATM and there's a small Dollar Bank logo next to it, if that is updated, it'll just be ATM and then it'll have the same size logo, just the updated new branded logo that they've released recently. We won't be changing any of the channel letters or any of the large signage that you see as part of this project.
Right.
Not sure that I would see a problem with that because the logo's kind of conservative anyway. It's not overly, it's just a matter of maybe updating your style or whatever,
Right.
updating the, so if it's around the same size, I'm not sure why there should be a problem then, unless
Okay.
someone else thinks that there is.
Any other questions for the Dollar Bank team?
So if not, pardon me?
This is Jody from the LRC. I just wanted to make a quick note. I think the door addition is new to us, the door addition on the corner.
Mhm.
So I haven't seen it before. It doesn't mean it hasn't been reviewed, but we would probably just, in the next 30 days, we would probably make a comment or any comments that we make, we'll file in the next 30 days based on that door. I don't see an issue with it offhand right now. However, I'm 1/4 of the review committee, so we'll probably want to review it just to make sure it's in compliance.
Okay.
So this will go to the Historic Review Commission, but there are 30 days of review that will continue. So if anyone in the community has additional questions, comments, they should send it to info@southsidecommunitycouncil.org. And there's always opportunity to provide your own comment, and you can do that by emailing the Historic Review Commission. The email address is listed, or you can send a letter. You can join the the virtual Historic Review Commission meeting via Zoom, and then actually speak. Very often with the Historic Review Commission projects, they are reviewed by the local review committee, as Jody had mentioned. He right now is representing the group, and they do meet and always invite the the developers to meet with them to discuss their projects in more detail, if there are no more questions here. So thank you, Heather and Michelle.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So our next project is what we all on Southside know as Zovko's Garage. And we'll be hearing from Jeffrey DiBenedetto with Hart Architects, who will present what the plans are. And also with him are two of the owners, Mike Senko and Ron Sampson. So Jeff, it's all yours.
Yes, thank you. As we just said, Jeff DiBenedetto with Hart Architects. And I'm gonna share the screen so we can all see what I'm looking at.
And just while you're sharing, this will be going to the Historic Review Commission.
Correct. So we've already applied to the city, Pittsburgh zoning, who have notified us that, well, we've initiated the application for the Historic Review Commission. Also, this building, because it is in a LNC district, light neighborhood commercial, and it is over the minimum square foot trigger for review, it will also be passing through the development review process, which also triggers the need for street trees. So that will also be part of this presentation. So as we said, this is what a lot of people know as the Zovko's Garage. It's on the corner of East Carson and 25th Street. Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay. In the red right there, this being East Carson, takes up the whole block of the 25th from East Carson to the alley, Carryway, and the back. The intent, so the previous use, which I'll get to in a second, and the intent I'll get to as well. This is just the site plan that shows 6 new street trees, specifically arranged to avoid, there are going to be 3 garage doors in place of where garage doors were historically. And to avoid those, the driveways and the existing utility poles and lamp posts. So we tried to figure out exactly when this was built, just to give a historic context to it. The closest I could find are these 2 photos on the left. The wood building right here on the corner of East Carson 25th existed in 1924. That's when these 2 photos were taken. However, in this aerial in 1939, you can clearly see the Zovko's Garage building is now in place of those wood buildings. So sometime in that 15-year period is when this building was built. It does have a slightly different style than the other historic buildings in the district, a little bit more Art Deco, and not quite as Edwardian as many of the other structures around the district or even Victorian. The previous use of the building, we could not figure out exactly historically it was going all the way back to the inception of the building. As far as we know, it has been an auto body and or garage of some sort or warehouse for quite some time. It's clear that originally there was a garage door that was on the original facade, as well as one on the side and one on the rear. The one on the side actually is still there. The one on the rear has been blocked out, which we do intend to put back. But other than that, we don't know what the original, if there was any different use other than those. For the second floor, the previous most recent use was a fitness gym that was built over, you can see in this photo right here, what used to be a bowling alley. And apparently this goes back quite some time because the gentleman who lives next door actually worked he's an elderly gentleman. I don't know exactly how old he is, but he said when he was a youngster, he actually worked at this bowling alley. So probably I would estimate sometime between 50 and 60 years ago. The owner's intent of this building is actually to convert it from commercial to a two-family residential, with the first floor being garage storage, bike storage, utility, and other general basement uses, with the apartments almost mirrored, two of them each, one each on each side of the building, front and back if you're standing on East Carson Street, with an exterior courtyard in the middle that's partially covered, partially open. For the most part, when it comes to the masonry on the building, with the exception of actually removing some of the signage and painting that is currently there, as is currently the intent, because we don't know how, as far as we understand it, Zofco's garage goes back about until the 1980s, as far back as I could, from evidence of things left behind inside and just trying to research things online. But you can clearly see on this facade, this portion right here in the front is previous infill. Obviously this plywood door thing was not original, and this was also bricked in at some point. All of this masonry, other than what has been added since the original construction of the building, we do intend to keep as is, repair as necessary, repoint as necessary, and clean as necessary, including the white paint and some of the damage that exists on the bottom of these pilasters, and restore them to a newer, cleaner look that is closer to what they would have originally looked like, as far as we can tell. The only other thing other than infilling these is replacing the window above with the exact same style, double hungs, no divided lights on the bottom, 6 on the top, and then infilling storefront where the storefront likely originally was, and then replacing the garage doors back into place. And we'll get to the specific styles of that as later in the presentation. This being
just one second. What's with the middle 3 windows on the top there?
Oh yeah, sorry. So going back to here, so outside of the interior courtyard, the owners are hoping to put in a patio, just a small front patio deck on either side, with the purpose being an exterior. It will still be covered as the roof originally was, but what they're hoping to do is open these openings up, but replace what would be the rhythm of the double hung sashes of the windows with some either wood or metal representation of those to keep the pattern the same, but hoping to make them open air to allow for a front and rear porch, one for each unit.
Gotcha. Thanks.
On the side of the building, the same thing that we've just talked about, these 2 squares near the corner of 25th and East Carson. Re-infill back with storefront. I'm not sure why there's some lines missing from that, but this window does look exactly like this one. The windows along the entire top, same thing. And then that interior courtyard in the middle, the same thing we just discussed with those front and rear porches. Replacing this garage door with a new one. Again, we'll get to the styles in a second. These windows on the first floor were twist out. I'm not even sure what the name for the style. It's not quite an awning because it twists in on the inside and out on the outside, which is why you can see these security cages have these triangular shapes to them. We do intend to remove those. We're 99% certain those grills were not original to the building. They were added later. The greatest evidence of that is on the rear of the building. These same twist out windows are there. However, they do not have the security triangular grills. So those windows, despite being operable, are currently not operable. The door here, which is just a panelized door, which we don't think is original, but would be intending to replace with the same storefront style as here, and also the new door to the apartment entry on the front, with removing this mechanical grille that was added at some point in the past and replacing it back with glass. Again, I don't know why these lines are missing. That's strange. The only other changes to this facade are these, what I believe were AC unit window hangers, would be removed from the facade. Obviously, those weren't original to the building because AC wasn't invented for another 15 years. This stack at the top would be removed, and we try to reclaim brick from somewhere, or as best we can find a matching to fill in the gap of the holes so we can remove this exhaust stack. The only other item remaining on this facade we touch are these downspouts, which I had a photo of it, but I did not include it in the presentation, unfortunately, are in very bad rusted condition. Parts of them, you can see here, this is PVC, then switches to ABS. One of these is original iron, and the rest of them are a conglomeration of those multiple materials. We do intend to go return these to their original 4-inch metal, or 4 or 5 inch, I forget the original dimension of the ribbed downspouts that were prevalent at the time that these upper portions currently are, and replace them with new ones. We would like to color them the same to match the windows, which again, I'll get to in a second. And then these top scupper portions would just be restored or replaced with exactly in kind if restoration is not possible. Rear facade on the alley, you can see a lot has changed since the original. They've been boarded up with plywood, not very well. This window down here has been removed. You can see these flat security grills, as I mentioned. The garage door has been boarded in, and there used to be a window up here, which has also been plywooded in above the man door. What we hope to do is return these windows to their former glory, install these. Instead of these, by the way, these first floor windows would no longer be operable. They'd just be fixed, but with the exact same grille pattern as what is there. Those windows on the first floor are actually metal windows. And again, I'll get what our proposal is to replace them with in a second. But replace all these windows back into the former openings. And what we're hoping to do for this middle window is open it up, match the exact same size, and put a brick ledger along the windowsill to match, so that we get an identical rhythm. Down here for the garage door, just remove the CMU that has been blocked in and replace it back to a garage door with the exact same size and shape. These are renderings of the proposed changes. You can see the garage door here. This garage door is made, and I'll show the exact model in a second, made by Overhead Door or something, or a model similar to that. We do not know yet at this time if some of these panes are going to be opaque. The owners, I believe, would like some of them to be opaque. But if we need an exact style of it, we can get you that within the next 30 days, depending on how people, if there is a preference or care, since we don't actually know what the original door looked like, since it is not there anymore, and could not find it, unfortunately could not find any photos of it. Storefronts, infilling the previous, where the storefront originally was, you can see that the windows are changing, or replacing in kind with the ones, and you can see here just a pseudo rendered representation of what those upper open grill sashes might look like on those porches. And then you can see the downspouts in the same place of those scuppers, finished to match the finish of the windows. It's just side and the rear. I'm not going to repeat everything I went through, but you can see everything just being replaced. This side garage door would be same style to match the one in the front. However, the one on the rear would be fully opaque to match more closely actually what is currently there on this one. The reason for the glass is both because it is a very public way, and to try and keep down the amount of opacity on the street front, and keep the activation, the public activation as well as we can, and not close it off in the kind of the way that it currently is. And also the front door does currently have glass in it, although clearly it is not the original since it is smaller than the original opening. Just another view, seeing everything in context. You can see the street trees around it. But other than that, that's everything we intend to change. Here's a close-up of the window. You can see the cages, which we intend to remove, and you can see the pattern of the window grill. It is metal. I don't know if I can zoom in, but unfortunately, no one makes a window like this anymore. We are hoping to propose the Pella Architect Series Contemporary Aluminum Clad, which is the closest thing we can get to it. And again, it will have the same Muntin pattern to it. It will be the interior and exterior lights on both to be closest to the original single pane divided light system that was there. The brick mold for this floor, since it is a more Art Deco, more clean and modern style to it, would go with the cleaner, more modern brick mold that Pella offers. For the upper windows, you can see it has a more historic characteristic of Victorian Edwardian brick mold along the side. And it is a wood window, no divided lights on the bottom, single pane, 3/2 on the top sash of the window. Since everything else is aluminum, the storefront will be aluminum. The windows on the first floor are aluminum clad. And since these upper windows are a full story above, for the reasons of maintenance and because Pella does offer the traditional aluminum clad, historic looking windows in the aluminum clad, we're hoping to do that in aluminum clad so that way everything can match in finish. And also because it is easier to maintain, of course. But we will be selecting the historic, more historic, detailed looking brick mold that Pella offers for this window. For the Muntins, and we would go with the same divided lights, interior and exterior for these windows as well. For the storefront patterning, there was not much evidence to go on as to what it looked like. Referencing some other storefronts in the area, they seem to be kind of all over the board in terms of their style. Some have a full height windows within their openings without any divisions. Some have it in the upper, some have it as more like a chair rail in the lower. Some are sitting on half walls, and some have the mullion on the lower, some on the upper. But a lot of them do seem to have a mullion horizontally and vertically dividing up the style. So we are proposed to go with one where it's divided vertically into try to equalize the rhythm with the windows, and also from the size of the door. So they're roughly about 3 feet wide, with a horizontal mullion about 2/3 of the way up. And the system that we're proposing is the Conair Encore system or similar, the standard. It's one of the go-tos for storefronts in any district or implementation. For the garage doors, we, as I mentioned, overhead, you can see these opaque doors here, opaque panels. So some variation of opaque panels, glass panels. The owners are hoping to be able to do either frosted or tinted on the garage doors, since they can't put any sort of private protection on the interior of the glass on the inside, just to keep prying eyes, since it is a private residence, out of the interior of the space. And we're open to comments on that, if there are any opinions one way or another. And then the door in the rear alley, as I said, opaque, similar to overhead makes this particular photo door in this photo, but an opaque sectional door of some sort for the one on the alley. And just to conclude, the before and after of what we're proposing to do. And I believe that covers everything. I don't know if I missed anything, but if anybody has any questions.
Jeff, did you want to mention the trees?
Oh, the trees, the proposed trees are, because there are, you can see I put the utility poles here for reference. And there are indeed power lines and telecom utilities lines going overhead. So we need a shorter tree. The city of Pittsburgh Division of Forestry has a recommended list of trees. Most of them are crabapple trees, which are highly discouraged in urban and commercial contexts because of the fruit they drop, which limits the options down to 4 others. There are 2 maples, a magnolia and a hawthorn, and we went with one of the maples, this one being I forget the exact name, the Amur maple, I believe is what it is. And it's just a short, it grows max to 15 or 20 feet, which will keep it under the height of the power lines. It doesn't extend too far out and can easily be trimmed back as necessary for pedestrians and vehicle traffic and or parking.
And where will the trees be located?
So there'll be, let's see, go back to the site plan. So that front entrance to the apartment, the front apartment, the door's right here, the tree will be in front of it. There's still more than enough room, 9 feet to be exact, for pedestrians to be able to get by, and people to also simultaneously use the entrance to the apartment. On the side, we have 5 marching down, a pair that kind of go in front of where those storefront replacements are. That garage door is right here, and that's where that driveway will be. And trying to keep the same rhythm, these two and these two are exactly the same part, separated by this utility pole, and then one that is closer to the entrance to the apartment in the rear. And there would still be 6 feet of room for pedestrian access use between the building and the planters.
I have a couple questions for you. First is, what is existing zoning How is it zoned and what are you asking to go to? I assume that's one of your variances.
It is, we're not asking for a variance. It is currently zoned as commercial, an auto body garage. The upstairs actually does not have an active occupancy permit for it. But this is listed as an auto body garage, which is permitted in an LNC district, but single family, two family, and multifamily are all permitted by right within the LNC zoning district. So it's just a matter of formality of switching it from one to the other and making sure that any changes because of the change in occupancy are triggered, are satisfied with both zoning and building permitting.
So you're not trying to preserve the ground floor as any type of separate space that can be leased or rented out. It's part of the structure above. Divided.
Correct. It isn't, the whole building will be entirely private. It's dedicated to the use of the 2 apartments above.
And are they 2 apartments being rented or is the owner building them?
No, there are the two owners will actually be occupying these 2 units themselves.
Okay. And then the 2 units, how large are they? Does your plan, I know when you hit a certain square footage, you require 2 exits. Have you hit that square footage? Are you required to have 2 exits?
We don't need exits because they are single family, because it's R3, not R2 designation. So single family residential. So commercial code is not triggered. And then essentially it gets governed the same way any other single family or 2 family house would be. So a second means of egress would not be necessary by code.
Okay. The mechanical units, are they all on the roof?
They would all be on the roof, the flat roof. Actually, thank you for bringing that up because one important thing I do have to mention, here on the roof, you can actually see, I'm just zooming in, even though that you're not going to get any higher resolution. This is the opening for that interior courtyard. The structure does have to remain. That's a steel beam that's going across that is currently there. This flat roof is actually in the process of collapsing. The steel is in perfect condition, but spanning between the steels is wood purlins and wood rafters sitting on top of them. They were spaced in such a manner that would be very much not to code today, and is likely the reason why they are cracking and falling. We have an active emergency roof replacement permit with the city. The zoning has already approved it with the understanding that the flat roof will be replaced in kind and take up the exact same space as the original roof. The roof is not visible from any public way, and any mechanical units that you do get put on the roof would likewise not be visible from any public way. They will be kept to the interior away from any of the parapets, but the exterior parapets do rise a good, I don't remember the number exactly off my head, but somewhere around 20 to 30 inches above the height of the roof. So any equipment that is on the roof, even if put next to it, would be hard to see. And we will, as I said, locate them towards the middle of the roof, or at least towards the interior parapet, so that way they cannot be seen either from East Carson or 25th Street or the surrounding streets.
And there's no intended use of the roof deck or patio. I see a couple of access hatches possibly, but otherwise that's just for mechanical maintenance? Or?
Correct. That is exactly correct. The hatches are just there, so for mechanical access and maintenance. We do have a few skylights scattered throughout, just to provide interior light, since it is a large structure, and a deep floor plate which makes the skylights the only way to really bring natural light into the interior. But as I said, the skylights will be protruding at most 8 to 10 inches from the surface of the roof, which will put them 10 to 20 inches below the height of the parapet.
Okay. And the sidewalks, are you replacing all the concrete or just cutting in the trees and doing modifications as needed?
My understanding, one of the owners or 2 of the owners are on the presentation as well. My understanding We haven't gotten to this point in the design portion of it, but I believe we did have discussed that they do intend to replace all of the sidewalks with new in-kind concrete and keep them nice and shiny. And obviously that also provides the opportunity to put the planters in.
That sounds great. I just want to make you aware that there is a PennDOT, active PennDOT project, and the front facing Carson is part of that, is part of the improvement.
Okay.
So not sure, you might want to talk to Domi about the plan right in front of your building, see what is what they're doing, and to coordinate your effort possibly.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I was actually not aware of that. I will definitely do that.
Hi, this is Mike Sanko. I'm one of the owners. I talked to the foreman of Golden Triangle today, actually, about that. So they are replacing the entire sidewalk on the front of the building.
Yep.
And about, I would say, 20 feet on the side to redo their larger sidewalk system. So I am aware of their changes, and we're in coordination with them.
Great.
And all of the sidewalk will be exactly the same.
Yeah, I'm
as
hoping you
they're
can.
doing.
Yeah, I'm hoping you can take the exposed aggregate down the side and not just do simple gray concrete, but.
Yeah, nope, it'll be exposed.
Great.
That's the plan, yes.
Great. The only other concern I had the last issue is about the doors and the windows at grade. And I think this plays into Jody's LRC comments here. I'm a little nervous about keeping all three garage doors just because, well, we know from other conversations in the neighborhood, doors facing the right of way are sort of a safety concern, especially with all the pedestrians we have. As the door opens and the cars come out, people are walking by and accidents happen. The building has two right now. Actually, Zofco was my garage, so I know coming in and out of it's a little tricky. And you're adding a third now. The back one, I'm a little hesitant. I mean, it's really difficult to get in and out of. The back alley is very, very tight. And I'm wondering if you need all three, if the existing two or even one would be enough. The front door is going to be gigantic, just to reduce the amount of pedestrian vehicular intersections that would occur here at this building. What are your thoughts on that? And Jody, I don't know if anybody else has thoughts on that, but yeah.
But if my understanding is that the owners would like to try and keep all three, I don't know if they have any information to add to that. If either Mike or Ron has any ideas or comments as to what the intended purpose is. I do know they plan to use it flexibly, and because it is a private residence, the amount of traffic going in and out will be limited to just their own personal use. So a lot less traffic than the garage would have led to. And I don't know if they have any additional comments to add to that.
We really haven't talked much about eliminating any of the garage doors. That's certainly something I guess we can discuss internally to see if that's an option. But our intent was to keep it as historic as possible with leaving the garage doors as they were.
And I don't mind the front one. I get it. It's the garage motif and it's big and it actually looks very nice. And this side one is all right, but I'm thinking the rear one, it's I don't know, maybe, I don't know if anybody else has thoughts on it. The side or the rear one, just they're very tight. I don't know if you've been in that alley, but people park right there up against that wall now. And basically, when we're doing developments further back off of Carson out of the LNC, I grant you, we're trying to not promote garages at the front of the buildings because of the interaction of the cars parking, pulling in, backing out, and crossing very busy sidewalk in our neighborhood. So it also takes up, you eliminate a parking spot on the street everywhere you have a garage door. So you're eliminating 3 public spaces, 2 of them that are active now, actively removed, and the third, you'll add a third on the back because that's a lot of time. That is a car parked up against that wall there. So I guess I would be encouraging you to consider maybe just keeping 2 doors and just making do with that and leaving the back as parking or lane parking, possibly, or if you want to give up the side one and then add to the more public parking on the side, because that's public parking on that block there. Anybody else have thoughts?
Well, I think a question may be if, because we're looking at a building in the historic district, there may be issues in attempting to make those kinds of changes. But Jody may be able to speak to that, or that may be something to discuss at a later time.
I can comment briefly. Well, thank you for the presentation. First of all, I think it's commendable, kind of the level of restoration that you're working on or working to do on this building. As the 2 comments I have, and I'll start with the garage door. So I think that's a point of negotiation, and the LRC as a group would love to have an opportunity to talk to you in the future. So we can provide our recommendations to the HRC kind of en masse. The rear garage door, we love to kind of restore original openings, and if this was obviously an original opening in the building. However, if it, for other reasons that doesn't work out, there are other ways to preserve the kind of the sense of the opening and not necessarily have it as an opening. One simple solution is infilling it with brick to match, but recessing it 2 to 2.5 inches so that it kind of creates the image of the opening. However, it's not a real opening, that's obviously up for discussion. But regardless of that, I think the main point I would make is on the upper floor windows on the 2, on the corner elevations, the 25th Street, South 25th Street and the Carson Street side, if those were originally wood, we typically like to see those restored with wood windows. And that's kind of a baseline guideline item that we've pointed out in other projects as well. So everything's negotiable, but that would be the starting point for the negotiation. The period of significance of this building suggests more of a metal window. I get it. However, if there are existing wood windows, 6/1s, that's where we would start our conversation and how to restore those. Other than that, I think the restoration of the building is commendable. As I said, I think it works pretty well. There's not a lot of changes here. I could see another point of discussion with the group being the patios where the windows are in place, but there's no glazing. However, I don't really have a comment on that right now. So it just might be something that other members might say something about, for or against. I don't know. So.
Thank you, Jody.
Sure.
Jackie has her hand up.
Thanks, Barb. I guess my comments are more from like a resident standpoint with the garage doors. I know there's 3 openings. I know you want to propose doing 3 new operable doors, but is there any way to eliminate 2 and maybe even go down to 1? When I look at the amount of traffic on the street on the Carson side, what's the benefit of keeping and enlarging and putting in that enormous door to pull in and out of, to cross pedestrians, to cross the thousands of cars that come down that street every day? And just from like a safety standpoint and in an ease of getting in and out of your units, why not maintain just a single one on 24th and infill the other ones appropriately based off the architecture of the building? I guess, I feel like that might be, in terms of a safety, that would probably be the best solution. When I look at it, I think like that, that building down on 15th from Thick Bikes where they have a big courtyard in the middle that's all parking, but there's multiple units. But there's only one way in and out. There's only that one passageway for cars to come in and out. And I would think of this as sort of like the same way. Can that be done in order to minimize the curb cut, in order to minimize crossing pedestrians and cars?
Understood. As Mike mentioned earlier, we were trying to honor what our understanding of what the original historic nature of the building was, that I'm not sure we would ever really even consider doing anything other than the 3 garage doors. That would be something I guess we would have to talk about internally and figure out what would potentially work functionally, and can we get that space underneath the 2-family house to work with 2 different or even just one access. I think the only thing off the top of my head that could potentially, so the owners do intend, as I said, to occupy these as their personal primary residences. But in the future, if they were ever to sell the building or rent it out, I have no idea what the intent is, but decades down the road, the 2 residences do have their own private entrances, and people, when it comes to storage and whatnot, now the 2 owners know each other, so they're going to be they're actually family members, obviously fine with sharing the space, but down the road, would people be okay with sharing the space and having public access, or at least access from the other unit to the storage? Would be something off the top of my head that we would need to consider and figure out whether or not how that has an impact on the potential use of the building down the road.
Yeah, and people do it in apartment buildings all the time.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I would just add from a safety perspective, I mean, there's 2 tenants in this building, so there's going to be very little traffic coming in and out of these garage doors. I mean, that's the plan and our thought. It's I just don't see a safety issue here. I hear your comments. I got it, understood, but there's 2 people living here, so there's going to be very little traffic.
Thank you. Michelle, you have your hand up?
I just wanted to, also a garage owner on 15th Street, that back alley, you may really want to look at it as a function, as will it be functional? We've had experiences, we have all the room in the world, but if somebody doesn't park, they park across the street from our garage, or they park too close in, we can't get out. And if you do ever want to sell it as really looking at, is that truly going to be functional? Because otherwise you're going to be spending a lot of time calling the police to have cars moved. And I don't even know if you can, if they're parked across the street. So we've actually had to measure our car when we went to go buy a new one, because we needed to make sure we'd be able to make the swing. So just a thought there. And welcome to the neighborhood when you're.
So I had a question about the Zovco sign, and we're just, as a community, learning more about the historic district guidelines, and certainly don't know it as well as the local review committee and the historic review commission. Is that a sign that should be staying? Is it painted on the brick, or?
It is painted. It is not the brick itself. Obviously, if it's a brick, then it is what it is. As I said, the sign is painted. I did go through the guidelines. I did not see anything in there that said one thing one way or anything one way or another in terms of whether or not it should be maintained. I believe someone a minute ago said that they were the owner of Zovco's garage, or at least the building. I don't know if they can attest to how long that sign has been there. But as I said, I was not able to find any information beyond, I saw evidence that it was there in the 1980s, but I don't know if that sign was there prior to that and how authentic or old that sign would be from an historic standpoint.
Yeah, and I know that, there are some signs that we've discussed that are called ghost, Mike, what are they? The ghost signs, ghost?
Yes.
But those, are historic. And, I wasn't sure about what we see is with Zovco.
I think we'll let Jody and Bob and that group discuss that and try and figure that out. Jody, have anything to add there?
Sure. There's really nothing suggesting that you couldn't remove it, especially if you would restore the brick to its original condition behind it. However, there's also nothing suggesting that you couldn't keep it if you wanted to, and it would become, again, similar to the ghost sign, it would become kind of this historic relic that just kind of, tells a story of the past, the history of the building. So,
Okay.
Yeah, I hope not, speaking from one owner's perspective. We're trying to make the building beautiful and pristine, and having that sign there just destroys it to me. That's just my perspective. So
That's fine. I think that's quite all right. I had one more thing. I think you're going to need a variance for, I don't know how many cars you gentlemen own or how many spots you're going to put inside, but I ran into this once before on a garage project in the city where I think you're only allowed 4 parking spaces before you need a variance for if you're going to have more. So if you're going to have more than, I think that's per dwelling unit. So if you're going to have more than 8 spaces down there, you're going to need a variance for that.
No, we are aware of that, and there is no intent to use that for anything more than that quantity.
Okay. It's a big garage. That's why I asked.
No, I understood. Like I said in the beginning, that it's going to be used as multi-purpose, multi-functions, storage, utility, and I think bike storage. There may have been some other uses that they've mentioned to me, but basically just use it for whatever they happen to need it for.
Great. Well, I'm excited. I love the building, and I'm glad to see it's being restored as well as you guys are doing. So
thank you.
And I think when we've reviewed 2400 East Carson Street on the other side of the block, and that's being renovated. And with this 2424, you really are bookending. It's going to look very, very nice. So, we thank you for that.
Well, thank you for those comments. Sorry, just to jump in there for a second, but just going back to the wood windows, that's why we went with the aluminum clad, is because directly across the street, that building was redone with the aluminum clad windows. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but that's one of the reasons we went with that look, because that building directly across the street, which I agree with you is beautifully redone, was done with aluminum clad windows.
That was part of the contributing decision in it, and as I mentioned earlier, was also to keep everything with the same finish, to kind of tie in the facade together as a whole. I think it's possible, if not likely, that the wood windows that are currently there are the original ones. It is strange to me that the windows on the first floor are these more odd, and this is one of the reasons why we think an auto body or warehouse of some sort was the original purpose of this, is because the first floor windows are so different from the windows above it and have this fluted metal steel style to it with the twist out sash. Being so different, which we thought was very odd, and actually creates more of a disjointed facade. And we do understand that in most cases, if not all cases, where a wood window is existing, to try and maintain them. But given the strangeness of the window types, the fact that the windows nearby, some of them have been replaced with aluminum clad, and that these are on the second floor, which makes them a bit more difficult to discern what the finish might be. But the homogeneity of the finish and all of those factors combined were kind of the rationale behind that decision.
I completely understand kind of your position and kind of how your approach to that. So I think it's just a point of discussion, and kind of comes back to my original comment. We'd love to, have some more correspondence with you guys as a group, as the LRC, not just me, because I think it's a point of discussion, not necessarily this is the way it is. I think there's some leeway here, given the period of significance of the building, the lower floor occupancy that originally existed, the precedence of the first floor window types. I think there's some give and take. So we'd just like to discuss that further with you.
Understood.
And I think also to understand that, we as a community give our recommendations, and certainly the local review committee is held to high regard with the Historic Review Commission. They ultimately make the decision. And so, as you work with Jody and the others, you always have to keep in mind what may the commissioners actually want to go with. And in some cases, they do support what the discussion has been with the developer and the LRC, and in other cases, they may not. But that's something that you all, certainly can talk about.
Sure.
So are there any other questions for this project?
I have some fenestration comments and questions. And I guess leave this image up that we're looking at now, the perspective rendering of the corner of Carson and the side street. The missing windows on various sides of the building where you're having exterior space. And I'm sorry I missed the first part of this. It appears that it's a masonry bearing wall construction. I'm curious how nice those masonry openings are going to look without any windows sort of covering space between face brick and backup, or if it's multi-live and taking the window out, you'll just have a nice deep masonry opening. What do you expect that's going to look like?
The owners might actually be able to answer this better because they're actively exploring, and there is an interior demo permit active on the building where they're starting to take apart. That's how they discovered that the roof was in dire need of immediate replacement. Okay. In terms of what might be behind some of those jams, if they have started to investigate what is there. But before they even go into that, I do want to say that one potential solution to that, since those openings with the kind of fake sash with that carries the same rhythm of the mullion or the muntins of the window that was there, we could do the same thing in kind and have the frame of the window be there as well, which could have the back extension on it that goes all the way to the back of the masonry. It is obviously not shown in the rendering, but that is one potential solution to cover up any masonry behind it that might not have ever intended to see the light of day.
And along those lines, and I don't know if the LRC or HRC are going to feel differently about it, but the notion of having those sort of muntin inserts without glass, they just feel kind of foreign. I mean, I understand the idea of trying to continue the rhythm, but to my eye, it might be more successful with nothing in there. If it's just a, masonry opening with no hooey, or if you have to do something to finish out the scar, if there is one between the wives. But
Sure.
I don't know. It just seems like it may not even be necessary to do the inserts in the places where you don't have glass windows.
Okay.
I don't know, Jody, you can yell at me.
I would agree. I kind of deferred that to the group because I think it's definitely a point of discussion. However, I would agree with you, Peter. I think there might be some benefit to, maybe casing it, but not doing the sash, sash design has no glazing.
Yeah, I don't think you need the sash. And then staying on this image here, the large overhead door. I get that this was historically a garage, maybe it was horse stables, who knows, but the sort of treatment of that is kind of in two time zones. Like everything above the first floor is in the historic time zone, fenestration wise, and then everything from the ground floor up for the first floor openings is kind of Mod Squad. And I'm wondering, back to some of the other comments that were made about active garage doors and opening and closing and so on, and if some of them could be non-operable, whether or not they are. But it seems to me that the idea of a glazed garage door might be problematic. Like, is that necessary functionally? Or is it just an aesthetic call? I think it's at odds with the historic character of what this probably was, even though we don't know. But we know it didn't have a glass garage door back at the turn of the century or whenever. So that's one point I wanted to make, that maybe if it's, just a solid panel garage door, or if it's something that looks like, I don't know, you look at carriage houses in various parts of town that have different large opening doors, if they had stable or livery there, or whatever. So to me, that large overhead door front and center just looks out of place on a historic note. And sort of along those lines, and I realize overhead door and Clopay and all the folks who make these things usually they're not sitting on a shelf somewhere. They don't get delivered until, or they don't get built until somebody orders them. And I'm curious if it would be possible to play with the vertical Muntin pattern on this, to space it out and maybe have it speak to what's happening upstairs on the second floor, the kind of rhythm that's happening with those window bays and brick details. If there's a way for that to carry down to this overhead door that doesn't have to be glass. I don't know if that's.
I'm not sure if that's a thing that's necessarily possible, but it's definitely something that we could explore with the manufacturer.
Yeah, just spacing those verticals out a little bit more so that they have a dialogue with the rest of the building. So that's
right.
If it's possible.
Sure. The one that we're looking at is pulled directly from their website, and
I guess.
So I don't know what the options are. I just know that this is how it comes, and then I tell the program what size it is, and then it goes in the model. Right. In terms of so I guess you said you joined the conversation a bit later. The owners would like to potentially explore, let's see where it is, having some of the panels actually be opaque rather than entirely glass, for multiple reasons. One of them being, privacy, since it is a private residence. And the reason why we went with glass were twofold, because the current door that is there does have glazing in it, and since we don't know what the original door may have looked like, had in it, it's possible that it did, it's possible that it didn't. It's new enough of a building that it's more possible that it did, rather than one that from around the turn of the century. That being said, the other reason behind it is I realize every historic district in the city is different time periods, different design guidelines, different styles. Other ones in the past, the Historic Review Commission has actually denied an all opaque door on more than one occasion and specifically requested glazing to be included in it. Now, like I said, again, other districts actually have guidelines specific to garage doors. The south side guidelines do not, but we just drew on past experience around the city and our interaction with the HRC, which is the reason behind that. However, if
Fair
opaque
enough.
is possible, is
Fair enough. And while we're on the first floor fenestration, I also think, looking across the street to the more recently built examples of, 2-inch wide Conair storefront systems, I'm wondering, that just feel out of place here in comparison to what's happening upstairs, which upstairs feels spot on. And I'm curious if you've looked at other manufacturers of storefront systems who make systems with smaller sight lines, narrower styles, etc., that might be more sympathetic to what you're trying to do with the windows.
We have not explored that. The sight lines on the Encore, I actually don't even remember what the dimensions are, just because I just generically specify it so often. I don't remember if they're 2 inches. I know they do have the tri-fab system, I think, is 1 3/4. Some other manufacturers may also have smaller sight lines as well.
Yeah. Some of the other folks out there in storefront land have, maybe it's even a steel system, I don't know, but just to get tighter so that it feels more simpatico with what's going on with the windows on the second floor.
Okay, we can definitely look into it. I did, as I did point out earlier, I don't know if you were present for that or not, but the strangeness of this building is that it appears that the first floor and the second floor were originally built with completely different styles, which is actually the reason why we were trying to be sympathetic to that.
Baked in, that's why.
Yeah. It is very strange. The upper windows are all, we believe, if they are the original, are wood ones, but the windows on the first floor are all steel. And steel in a completely different style, steel with some, a front rib fluting on it, and they are twist out windows as opposed to the wood double hungs above. We don't have obviously any evidence as to what the storefront originally was, but given the fact that they went through the expense of doing steel windows in the late 1920s, early 30s, we would assume that the storefront probably was something similar to that, which is why we went with the more generic style. But it's kind of hard to say which way it would have went, but that's the reason why we just went with the standard one, which seems to match the rest of the storefronts that have been installed around the area, and there are quite a few examples.
But I'd say they're not the best sort of precedent.
Sure.
For a historic building. I mean, because they're all newer construction.
Right.
So, all right. Well, thank you.
Okay. We can definitely look into that. Sure.
Yeah, we had a similar conversation on the Goodwill building at 24th and Carson, where they're proposing a similar storefront on the first floor. I think so. I can't remember exactly, but they were referencing the Southside Works buildings, which are more late, early 2000s designs. So this may merit some additional investigation into a more historically appropriate first floor fenestration design, as Peter was mentioning. The issue I see is, or the problem I would see is that for typical first floor occupancies, we're looking at a commercial occupancy, at which point we promote that transparency. However, this is a garage. So I've done a project where we did a garage in the historic district. It was off of Carson, but they did, we went with a much more opaque traditional garage door, which garnered the approval of the Historic Review Committee at that time. So there may be some precedent to look at that a little more.
Okay, that's fine. I'm not sure the owners, I don't know if Mike or Ron have anything to add, but I'm not sure they would have any problem with going with a fully opaque door.
No, we haven't really, we haven't discussed it a lot in detail. We were just trying to get some good natural light into the building. We've got a lot of side windows there. So yeah, you know, it's up for discussion, sure.
I agree.
So if there are there any other questions for this project? And if not, Jeff, I'll connect you to Jody and others from the LRC so that you can continue the discussion.
Sure, absolutely. That'd be great. Thank you.
And
Thank
again,
you for all your comments. Appreciate it and appreciate your support.
yeah, and again, thank you and welcome to the community.
Yes, welcome.
Yes, thank all of you. Appreciate it.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So again, this will be going before the Historic Review Commission, and my comments are similar to what I had said for the 1712 East Carson Street, the Dollar Bank project. So what we will do now is move on to our third project. And for those of you that have driven down East Carson Street near the Sokol Club and reminisced about the car wash that used to be there, this may be your lucky day. We're going to hear from Mike Archer, who is with BL Companies, about the plans for a car wash on the site. And then Joe Bertucci, who is with Express Wash Concepts, will be available to answer questions.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen as the others have, so you can see what I'm describing. Can you see my screen and my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Yes, as introduced, I'm Mike Archer with BL Companies. We are the engineering firm that is working with Express Car Wash to provide, hopefully, a new car wash at the location of 3010 East Carson Street. And I'll flip the page here. That is at the point of East Carson Street and Sarah Street. And as was previously mentioned, this was a former car wash that had the self-serve bays with the wand. This is the first time we're presenting to this group on our proposed development. We are looking to submit our zoning application and anticipate a site plan review based on our pre-app meeting with the city. The car wash is an administrative exception in this zone. So there will be a public notice period once that application is made to the city. As I said, the site is located between East Carson and Sarah Street. Currently, it is not being used. The former use was a car wash. Our proposed use would be a automated car wash that you would drive up through, get on a conveyor, get carried through the tunnel, and then there are some self-serve free vacuums that would be associated with this. This is as the site looks now. Here's a rendering of proposed improvements and developments at the site. As I said, it's a automated car wash. Vehicles would enter on this side of the building, run through the tunnel and exit, and then they could then leave the site, or they could come and use our self-serve vacuums. Just a little bit of layout and the description of the dimensions here. I do have a site plan that shows a lot more information that we can get into, but there are proposed, I think, 19 vacuum spaces, 8 or 11 vacuum spaces on this side, 8 on here, and then 3 additional spots for employee parking and an ADA accessible vac / parking spot at this location. As you can see, we propose to, pretty much take up the entire footprint of the existing site. However, there would be some interior landscaping and then peripheral landscaping. This rendering does not show the street trees, but those are included on our landscaping plan along East Carson Street. This is the view along East Carson. You see the architectural treatments of the building, and then we are proposing to provide a mural on the side that is most visible from East Carson. This is the pay stations are here. There's one located adjacent to the building, and then an additional pay station under a canopy here.
Hey, Mike, can I interrupt just for a moment?
Absolutely.
Hello, everyone. Joe Bertucci here with Express Wash Concepts, Clean Express Auto Wash. On this visual you see here, I just want to make note that when you look to, I don't think you can see my cursor, but if you look to the right side of the building where the canopy is, it says free vacuums up top. That sign, as well as the Express Auto Wash sign underneath our clean, do not illuminate. Those are just affixed to the Nichiha redwood there. So those actually do not illuminate. Only the clean with the water drop illuminates. And the mural you see in the middle is specific, obviously, to Pittsburgh, and more so South Side being the hot metal bridge in our colors. This was something that we picked internally. We do like to be a part of and become a part of the community, in addition to nonprofit and charitable givings to specific groups in the community we operate, not just the city, specific neighborhoods we operate. We also want to blend in and become part of the city. So we fully intend to do a mural here. Whether it's this one or not is open to conversation with Southside Neighborhood Council. And we would love input. This is something we picked. So just as a representation, if you have a better idea, we're open to it. If you like our overall development, but we would like to do something that represents, typically our building would be a very light brick with a charcoal dark band. So it is still a very nice, bright feel to it. And it's a very modern, contemporary feel, but we would like to have something that incorporates something about the South Side onto our building. Thanks, Mike.
Yep, absolutely. Again, some more rendering and more views. As Joe mentioned, this sign, the Express Auto Wash, is not illuminated. Just that portion of the sign is illuminated. Again, traffic going alongside the building. This is a view from East Carson, but as I said, there would be some, street trees planted along that road. You can see, we have 2 lanes that individual pay stations are metered through gates. Then you merge into 1 lane, come around the building into the building. You can see the VAC standards here in the back a bit. There's a better view here of what those VAC standards look like. We also have an area that if, unfortunately, if something would break down within this system, we can access that vehicle and get it out of the queue, so to keep things moving along. Let's go through some of the renderings again. Just they're all very similar, showing the views again. The VAC standards here, ADA compliant here, ADA access to a small office and storefront here. This is an automated car wash, but it is staffed by 2 to 3 employees at all times to help facilitate getting, making payments, getting through the tunnel, answering any questions, providing any, services that a customer may need, they do have staff on site at all times. And an overall view from Sarah Street. Again, another entrance exit point as shown there. What is not shown, and you'll see on the landscaping, is a decorative fence that is proposed along the property line on the three sides, the two sides to the Sokol Club, and then this area that the URA has at the point, a fence along that area as well. And again, for presentation purposes, to make it easier to see, that fence is not shown here, but it would be a decorative fence along there as well. That's final. The overhead shot, and as again, Joe mentioned, you can kind of see the light brick here, the standard colors, but we would like to do something along this wall that meets the neighborhood's approval. As far as, I just closed it. The landscaping plan has pretty much the same information that I was going to show. You can see this is the existing concrete pad from the former car wash. We'd be looking to, again, that is pretty much all pavement. We would be adding some green space and landscaping in those areas, landscaping along this property line. These are the vacuum spaces. They are 12 feet wide by 19 feet. A little wider than a typical parking space. This allows you, get your doors open, get in there, do your cleaning, grab any garbage you may have. There are receptacles here for that garbage, so you can clean out your car. These are the two vac producers that would be located at the end of those parking rows, and would generate the vacuum along these parking spaces, or these spaces, and then also along the building. Like I said, this is our first time presenting to the group, so we'd be looking for input on the mural, any input on anything that you've seen here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen shortly so I can open up that other file so you can see it, which has some of the other site improvements on there.
So Mike, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just letting him finish, but I guess I could ask, this is probably a joke question more than a Mike, but what are your planned hours of operation?
Yes, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and 9 to 6 on Sunday.
6 on Sunday. And that's at least 2 staff there? Is that what
At least, yes, sir. At least 3 is the ideal. We have typically 1 employee out at the pay stations to help customers, and also greet members, because we do have memberships. We have one team member in the office area. If anyone would want to come in and either join membership, buy an air freshener, towel for their car, and then another employee who walks the lot to either help customers or to clean up if a customer were to mistakenly drop something, when cleaning out their car. So they're there to keep we like what we call as the Disney experience, to rip off of them, but we want our customers to feel good, our team members to treat them like family, and our property to look the best in the neighborhood. Our landscaping, I wish we had more room, because we put so much landscaping into our properties. We love it. We actually want you to feel good when you're there. We want you to come and vacuum your car, and we want you to use our property as much as you can and enjoy the experience. We really do.
Oh, that's great. Your music to my ears about the garbage, because that was one of my comments and questions about having staff keep the property clean at the beginning and end of day. Something that we encourage all of our businesses to do to help out.
And what
So,
we do, Mike, to help enforce that and to facilitate that is we have secret shoppers. So all of our sites are visited by individuals who are doing a survey who goes straight to our company. We get it on our mobile device of a failing grade. So I'm born and raised in Pittsburgh, but I'll be here anyway. So I would be one of the individuals along with operations to go there and figure out why we're not performing, if that would be the case immediately. So we are always monitoring our performance.
wonderful. Mike, were you going to show us something else before I ask?
I was just gonna can you see my screen?
Yes.
This is the site plan, which has, a little bit more detail on what the improvements on the site would be. We've looked at the turning radiuses in and out of the building to make that as comfortable and, as easy as we can to get in and out of the building. Like I said, there is a little bit of a merge point here, but there's room to swing around, line up, get into the tunnel. And then at the end of the tunnel, there is heated concrete pad at the end of the tunnel. And also there's room to come out of the tunnel and then make that turn to, again, either exit or go into the back area and do what you need to with your vehicle there. The aisles are 24 feet. We keep as much room as we can. Again, as Joe said, try to make it as comfortable for the user as possible. Try to provide as much space as you maneuver across the site as the site, can allow.
Excellent.
Experience there.
Mike, 2 points on what you just said. The pay stations do have arms. Only one can go up at a time. They cannot open at the same time. If there is a car in the way or a customer is waiting because that gate is waiting for them to pull through, that other gate will not open. So it really makes sure that those customers know who's next in line. Obviously, customers buy different car washes, and so that's important too. But just from a sheer safety perspective, to make sure no one is able to move forward until that other vehicle's out of the way. And then another small note talking about landscaping. If you look at the building right below where it says proposed use service station, I don't know why it says that, but that little inlet insert there, that little indent in the building, we are going to put flowers there. So if we can find space to put landscaping, that's what we're going to do. So just as another point to show that we really try to make it look good for our customers when they pull onto our property.
Well, that's great, because one thing I want to talk to you about is that corner, the park. The community council is going to be working with the city and the neighborhood to redo that parklet there, and then what's now formed across the street. And we're going to be doing some neighborhood signage and stuff. And maybe we can come to you to ask for some participation in that.
Oh, that's music to my ears.
Yeah,
I thought I was gonna have to go to RIDC myself and ask if we could take care of their landscaping for them, but we absolutely would love to participate in that, and we love making things beautiful. So
that's great. I will be calling you soon. But as part of that, I noticed you have the garbage in the corner there, the front corner. And knowing that site well myself, because I've been down there a lot and I used to use that, I was wondering if you could consider moving that to the top right-hand corner, because in the winter when the vegetation's down, I don't want sort of that corner looking like a garbage enclosure, coming down Carson basically, because it's kind of the entrance to the community, and the back corner could easily sustain that, back in one of your extra spots possibly. Do you think that's something you could consider?
We will look at that, because I'm with you. That is the probably last spot that I'd want it at the focal point of our building, which is where our sign is, and it's like the entrance to South Side. I agree with you 100%. We will absolutely look at that and see where we can position that.
Awesome. Another thing, I used to use that car wash a lot. The exit on the back onto Sarah, it was always a problem. I noticed in one of your renderings that you were trying to preserve one street parking spot to the left or towards the end of Sarah, not right there. It seems like you have one spot sort of preserved. That was actually very dangerous when that other car wash was there, because people coming out couldn't see the cars coming around. And I would encourage you to talk to the city to see if that could be posted as no parking from your basically driveway around the bend to the front, because
Okay.
I saw personally a couple accidents there in the years that I was using that car wash. Because people just whip around and you'd already start your turn and people would drive right into them. So I would, even though I'm all for parking, that one spot was highly problematic. And sometimes people tried to force two cars into there. So if you could get that posted as no parking, I think that would be much better for not having a car accident by your business. So
we'll definitely bring that up. And our curb cut is positioned based upon the requirements of having a setback from the turning radius. So that is positioned where we have to position. And I agree with you 100%. If the city can work with us on removing that, that'd be great.
Yeah, we did in our pre-app meeting with the city, we talked about, limiting, it's a pretty wide entrance here. There's a lot of, it makes for a lot of different exit points, makes that difficult. Yeah, bringing that a little bit closer. And I think that conversation with the city would be, I'm not sure which way they will go with that, but it's an easy conversation to have. There's definitely valid reasons to try and eliminate that parking space.
Okay. I assume you're gonna have cameras and security and that
Yes.
will work all the time. Okay.
Right.
Just want to make sure. That'd be great. And then what are you doing for stormwater and recycling? Are you doing any type of sort of green infrastructure on this project, since you're very heavy on the water usage? And I don't know if you know about the new city plan to charge you based on usage. So are you
Yes.
trying to do anything with that, or?
We do.
Yes.
All of our sites have what we call a reclaim system. So it's typically out in the back lot. I don't know if you have that up, Mike, or not, but
I don't think it's shown here on this particular.
so out in our vacuum lot, immediately adjacent to the building, there are three, I don't know the gallons of them, I should, but there are three reclaim tanks, which take up about a 60 foot by 20 foot hole in the ground.
Okay.
And we recycle 90% of our water. So you actually use less water washing your car at our wash per car than you would at your house. That sounded very salesy, and that is the slogan that all car washers use that have reclaim tanks, but it's true. So your car is washed with reclaimed water until the very end, where you want to make sure that any debris, or not debris, but any soaps or anything that is on the car is off, you use fresh water. So we're able to recycle 90% of our water and use 20 gallons of water per car wash.
Yeah, and again, it's not shown here, but this is typically where the location is, somewhere in this area. There are these tanks. There's also an oil water separator.
Right.
Then anything that is going to go into the public system would go through that. There is a sanitary line along East Carson that we would be, that we're coordinating our utility attached, tie-ins with that. That's where we'd be looking to do. As far as stormwater, there's an existing, and I will get, there's an existing stormwater inlet at this location, and the site generally drains, it's pretty much all impervious at this point, concrete, all going towards that curb inlet here. We would generally keep that same type of flow and try and tie into that point. We are, in decreasing our impervious area by adding some of these landscaped areas, which is again, where we can add landscaping, we will be adding landscaping to reduce that impervious area and runoff. We're still working through a lot of the nuts and bolts and details of that stormwater design, but that is the intent, is to address stormwater by reducing our impervious area and tying into the existing system with a reduced flow.
Great.
What's going there now.
Then my last comment is about the Carson Street entrance exit. Is it going to be a exit right turn only? I'm not sure if the island exists in front of you there or if it's just starting, but are we going to have some type of signage to, I guess, stop people from turning left out of there? It's a very busy area. People are driving pretty fast at that point. I'm not sure if left-hand turns out of that exit should be allowed or promoted.
I know, again, we're working through some of those details and we'll work with Domi on that. I do believe, though, the I'm not sure if the island exists there, but the turn lane goes back that far.
Right.
So that
It
is,
would make
again,
sense to make a left across a turning lane and a through lane and hope that no one's coming inbound to south side the other lane. So
Right.
we don't want our customers doing that, because if our driveway shuts down, then our business shuts down, and we don't want anyone to get hurt on top of that either. So I'd imagine that would be a right out when all said and done.
Yeah. Great. That was all my questions. Thank you. I look forward to working with you guys. Great job.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. Can you go back to the rendering from Carson Street, looking at the building? Yeah, that one. I think that the artwork idea is excellent, and I'm curious if you've approached anyone about that. The city has a public art commission and Office of Public Art, where they hook you up with local artists and make magic. So I'd encourage you to explore that. And I know SSCC has also worked with local artists for various murals on various other buildings, and so anyway, I think that could be really, really great. And along those lines, the light fixtures that you're showing on the building are kind of unfortunate. They look like wall packs, you know, like those big glare beacons, like on the side of the building. And it seems to me, if you're going to go to the trouble to make a mural, you could just do a different kind of light fixture. Maybe it's, you know, on some kind of arms that point back at the face of the building, and then the mural is your light fixture, if that makes sense. So yeah, if you could tweak the lighting on that, that could be amazing.
The photometrics is something we're actually still working on. So I did, your point is, note is taken, and I've taken note. I think it's a great idea to have that sort of down lighting and really highlight that mural.
Yeah, like make the side of the building your light fixture, instead of
Peter,
having these glare spots along Carson Street. And also for the other incidental lighting you have, you know, under the drive-through canopy at the exit door on the left side of this image, you know, maybe they're more directional and not broadcasting out to the public right away, but you know, just lighting whatever you need to light.
We do make sure that our lighting does not spill over outside our property line.
Right.
So we try not to light it up. We don't want it to look like a car dealership.
Right.
We just want lighting where we need it.
No, you're going, I mean, with this mural, it's going to look like public art. So yeah, if it just is lit in a beautiful way, I think it would be just that much better. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you.
and this is Quaylin. You could also, when choosing your light fixtures, choose something that's not only showing down, but also something that's not ultra modern, but that would fit in a little bit better with the historic district.
Okay. Thank you.
So does anyone have any other comments?
I did have a question about any hearings that you're going to have. Are you going to the zoning board for any variances or special exceptions or anything like that?
Again, this time it's not anticipated that we'll be going to the board for any variances. We are, again, working on our application. I'm going to submit that here. Hopefully, there's no issues that we're going to make some changes on based on our call here tonight. So we're going to be submitting that application. Like I said, it is a administrative exception for the use. So there will be that 21-day notice period.
Did they or did zoning mention anything about the use being a drive-through use and that potentially needing to seek a variance?
That was not discussed in our pre-app meeting.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering because if they recommended that the projects have to go to a development activities meeting like this, I would have thought that there might be something that was triggering that to have the meeting.
For this meeting, Philip?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, they recommended it because there's a neighborhood community council, and that
Okay.
because we would be part of the community, that we
Yeah.
get the input, which is great. For example, like the corner for the landscaping, it's great. We had this meeting for that, plus the lighting. We didn't know if you'd like the mural idea or not, or if you had different ideas. So it really was I think, to make sure that our use was acceptable and the design that we're bringing is acceptable for the South Side.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and so I think to piggyback on what Philip was saying, there are times that you can have meetings with a neighborhood group, be they a registered community organization or not, coming to a development activities meeting, as you did here, it's triggered by certain criteria. And, that criteria has to do, and I can send that to you, Joe. It's also, on, both city planning's website and ours. And because then you have to go before either the Historic Review Commission, Art Commission, Zoning Board, or Planning Commission. And that's when they ask, have you engaged the community? So I find it interesting too, that there's that you have the placard, the orange placard that's going up, and it's to go up 21 days before before a zoning hearing. So again, that also would have, the zoning would be asking, if you didn't meet these criteria that I have talked about, at that zoning board meeting, they would be asking, have you engaged the community? And that's what happens when that orange placard goes up. And then in some cases, they will send letters to the addresses of people who live around there, because again, they want to know about community engagement. What you have here is, I think, a little more formal, as I said, based on certain criteria. But I think which means you're going to the zoning board, and it very well may be that you're going for that administrative exception. And
well, the administrator exception would not go to the zoning board, but it does require the notice, which is why the placard is up.
Okay.
And
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, you continue.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, the administrator exception is just handled by the zoning administrator.
Okay. Where we keep learning here about everything involved in dams and zoning and all.
I think only appeals of the zoning administrator's decision would result in actually going before the board.
Yeah.
It's always like a remediation appeal process. So I think the appeal potential, I don't think it's a potential necessarily, but if there was an appeal of the administrator's finding.
So I think that, one of the things as you get closer to that time period, you wouldn't need to come to another dam, but it would be great if what you could do is come back to us as a community group. And certainly we can invite people that have been in attendance on this Zoom call so that we can see what adaptations or changes that you may have made as a result of the discussion here this evening.
Yeah, we'd be happy to do that.
Okay. So any other questions?
Barb, this
Yes.
is Jackie. I just really want to echo what Mike said about this being sort of the gateway to our community, this intersection. You know, the site's been a mess a long time. The last thing I would have really wanted was another car wash there, but if it's going to be a car wash, I'm kind of happy it's you guys, not someone else.
Thank
So,
you.
I really, want to emphasize taking those comments and considerations back to the drawing board and thinking about that, as far as, the appearance from the street. And then my other question was, the mural seems to be well received here. And a lot of times we see mural or potential artwork on drawings. A lot of times is like a value engineering exercise to eliminate some type of exterior material. If that mural doesn't happen to come into fruition, what would that material on that wall be?
If you can see, Mike, I don't know if we have another view, maybe go on the back side of the building. Can you see that? We have this sort of off-white brick, and then there's that, I'll call it a charcoal brick on the lower quarter. That is, that is what I'm biased, but I think we built a pretty nice building. And we don't spare any expense because we want it to look good. We want our customers to think it looks good and want to come to our car wash. So that would be brick all the way around.
That's what I was just curious.
Yeah, that's what it would be all the way around. In fact, what we did take away were windows. And they're non-functioning, obviously. I mean, they do function, but we don't need the light inside. They just help break up a big wall. But when you have a mural, you have something beautiful to look at. That changes things. So the only other change to that, Jackie, would be that we would have a few windows on that side.
Okay, thank you.
So thanks to everyone for your comments and, for the presentation, and we look forward to working with you. So once again, welcome to the community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so our last presentation is for a change of use for 155 South 15th Street. And, we all know that this as the St. Adalbert's Convent. Refuse for Women has plans to purchase the property, although that purchase is dependent upon the outcome of the zoning board hearing. Teresa Golden, Director of Emergency Housing and Support Services for Refuge for Women, Pittsburgh, and Beatrice Harrison, the Development Director, are here to present. And I did want to share that they did meet with a group of neighbors who live on South 15th Street, South 16th Street, because of their proximity to the site and because of the nature of the change. And they were able to answer many of the questions that the residents had. So I did ask Teresa in her presentation to us, as she had done on Tuesday, was to share, what Refuse for Women is about, and how, just how it came to be that this was a site that that they are looking to purchase and use. So thank you, Teresa and Beatrix, for spending this time with us and learning more about Southside. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen here. And you will see it in our slide presentation. There's really not going to be any pictures of the property itself. More about our program and what we will be doing at the property. And that is because we're not changing anything structurally with the actual property. The building will be used and everything will be used the same way for the 40 to 50 years. And so our proposal is just a change of use. And it's really, even with that, the use is very similar to the way it's been used. It's just going to be a different type of resident who will be in the home. And so Refuge for Women, just give you a little bit of background about us, is a national organization that was founded in 2009 in Kentucky and has served women who have been sexually exploited and trafficked for the last 10 or 11 years. With our model, we have only done long-term housing, so housing for women from like up to a year, where they come in and they work a program where they receive therapy for the trauma that they've been in during that time of their trafficking. Out of working with these women for the last 10 years, we have realized that the first 2 months of that was really about stabilization. And so I'm gonna get in a little bit later in the slides about the different type of home models that we have developed over the last year or two, based on, again, the work that we have done for the last 10 years and how we can better serve the communities that we're in, as well as the women that we serve. And so here in Pittsburgh, this particular home originally started in Ohio as of the long-term house model, but we had started working with several of the law enforcement agencies within Pittsburgh and helping them out with some different resources. And through that relationship, have realized that emergency housing was the greater need in this tri-state area. So really Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. And so through that, we decided to relaunch our program and move closer to Pittsburgh to actually be able to provide those services for the task force that we work with and law enforcement that we work with, to provide resources for them, but also the property itself, the requirements that we need for this housing model, it basically checks off all the points that we need, would not have to do. And that's where we come into not having to do any kind of structural work within the property. This program, as far as the emergency housing, will be a licensed program, so we will be kept to a higher standard. And so with that, again, some of the property pieces, which I'll go into a little bit later, met those needs that we would need for that. So with Refuge for Women, again, Pittsburgh is newer as we just relocated there, but we do serve women who have been trafficked or sexually exploited. Only 18 and older will be in our property, but there is, of course, it can happen to anyone at any age, any race, any gender, but ours will be women 18 and older. And these are women who've been forced, either through force, fraud, or coercion, to perform sexual acts against their will. To relate to the need and why we are coming into the city, these are just some numbers that you look at. There's over 100,000 people in the United States that are being trafficked, but there's only 5% of those cases are actually reported. Most women won't report to law enforcement because of either the shame, the fear. And so we are really serving just a small portion of what is actually out there and what is actually being brought to our attention. But as working with these women, 92% of them have wanted out of the sex trafficking, out of the sexual industry, which when you talk about sex industry, that's strip clubs, prostitution, those types of escort services, things like that. But they lack resources and to be able to get a job, to have a place to stay, and to have health care for their needs. And most of them were brought into that situation. As you see for that one number, 75% of them were either physically or sexually abused as a child. So a lot of what they are doing now has come out of a necessity for survival. So who we are is basically, we are a nonprofit organization. We are a faith-based organization, and our mission is to really just empower these women to live a life of freedom. Through our residential healing program, we have a vision to have them see whatever their hope for their future looks like, and support them during that process so that they can live a life of freedom and independence outside of that situation of the exploitation. And so our values, you'll see here, these are our key values with our program. Safety is the biggest thing. We work hand in hand, like I said, with the Human Trafficking Task Force out of Pittsburgh, which is made up of the FBI, law enforcement, so City of Pittsburgh, as well as CSI, which is a child trafficking investigation organization, and Homeland Security. So we do work hand in hand with them, and they have brought this to our attention that they need a place for women to go when they are doing, say, a drug sting or some other kind of thing, even a trafficking sting, and they find a victim within that situation, that they need somewhere to take her. Currently, they've been taking her to hotels, which have been purchased by other organizations who are doing great work, but they don't have that residential piece. They don't have beds that the women can sleep in. And so our model is to provide those beds, to provide a safe place for them to come right up from there, to rest, recuperate, and start that healing process, which is our next value is the healing. We have all our staff is trained, evidence-based care, trauma-informed care. We will have licensed individuals in the home, and basically they start that from the minute they walk in the door. They start surrounding them with all the support and the love that they need in order to heal holistically. So spiritually, mentally, physically, whatever their need is at the time. Growth, we want to see the women grow. We want to see them grow into independent individuals who become productive members of society. And so we're there to walk with them. A lot of them have never had resources or do not even know what that looks like, because some of them have been trafficked since they were children. And so not learning those skills, they don't know how to implement them. And so we're there to walk with them and teach them how to do that. And then just growing however we need to, growing through our staff, helping the community grow in different areas, and then as well as being a faith-based organization, we want to see them grow spiritually. And we do feel that that is key to their healing. So some numbers just to show you what it looks like in this area. Pittsburgh is ranked as one of the top 10 cities for human trafficking. When you look at that, that's a lot of it is because of the proximity. It's because of the bridges, the railways, the airport being close, highways, and it's just the traveling back and forth. It's an easily accessible area. It is a big city, so a lot of runaways are trafficked. That's usually when it starts. So kids will run to this area, and we work with someone who deals with kids, and that is what they have noticed is they run to the Pittsburgh area because there's plenty of places to try to hide. But unfortunately, there are plenty of people out there that's ready to exploit them because of that vulnerability. Ohio, which is only 45 minutes away, is 4th in the nation for cost to the human trafficking hotline. It is, again, another big area where trafficking happens because of the interstate systems that come through there. And for West Virginia, not a lot of statistics related to them, but when you look at the cases of the women that we support who have been trafficked, there are 10,000s of victims related to just 16 individual cases. So it's not just the women that is trafficked, it's members of the community, it's their family members, it's their friends that are affected by these situations. So Refuge for Women is, like I said, a national organization. We started out in one state with the goal to expand in every state throughout the nation. We keep our houses small because we want to make sure that they get the care that they need, they get the resources that they need, and the support that they need to come out of it successfully. I know that's why our numbers look small, the 335. If you think about that, in the last 10 years, that seems small, but that's because of that, keeping each house small. But when you look at the nights of safety, over 6,000, nights of safety provided for women in our communities. We do have 10 homes in the 5 states we are in. Pittsburgh will be the 6th state, with plans to additionally dig in deeper into the states that we are currently in before we start expanding to other states. Some of our program impact is, 70% of our graduates have stayed outside of the sex industry, so they have not gone back into that life, and they've been able to move forward. Whether it's through going to college, whether it's through reuniting with family members who are safe, starting within the workforce, whatever it might be. And then 50% of our women, because we are a faith-based organization and we live that out in our day-to-day activities, have decided to get baptized. And you'll see here, these are some of the states that we are currently in and the different homes that are in each of those locations, which I will explain those more here in just a minute. But because we are a national network of homes, we are very unique, and we are considered the leading organization for safe housing for women who've been exploited and trafficked. And we do work with other organizations who do the rescuing. We aren't actually on the streets doing any of the rescuing, but we work with those frontline organizations who are out there working with the women and rescuing them. Like I said, the task force or just other ministries or other organizations who are on the streets. And then we're there to provide, again, that residential piece that they need. Once those women are pulled out of those situations or rescued from those situations, we can give them that safe housing. Our program is up to 2 years. It's completely free for all the women who come in, and we do have 24/7 staffing at each of our homes. So then that way they have someone there to oversee any issues, but also to be there for support. And all of our staff is trained to help them through this process, again, to heal from their trauma, to reclaim their identity, and to walk in grace outside of the bondage, whether that might have been physically, financially, emotionally, or spiritually. So this is our overall model for Refuge for Women for each of the locations that we are in. And since we are just starting out in Pittsburgh, we're starting with our first home, which is the emergency housing. This home is basically focused on that safety and stabilization. So we're going to help them come right off the streets, provide that safety, and then start working on that stabilization. So many of the women that come in that situation do not have any kind of identifying papers with them. So we work on helping them get their birth certificate, get their social security card, driver's license, whatever it is that they may need to provide one so that we can start the rest of the care. So that might be, starting with medical. A lot of them during their traffic situation, their health is deteriorated quite a bit. So we start right away with medical, helping them get on medications that they maybe haven't taken for years or need to be on now, to just general checkups, issues that they might have had related to their physical needs. Dental needs are a big thing. And so really it's considered a short-term model. So up to 90 days, it could be, they may be there 2 weeks, they may be there the full 90 days, whatever it takes to get them to that point where they can move on safely. The next step is they can move into one of our long-term programs, which is where they get the most of the healing part of it. So the restorative care and the healing, they work with therapists throughout the whole program, but that's where they're going to really dig deep into some of those traumas. A lot of the issues are the women aren't currently in trafficking situations, most of our residents, but because of past situations, either when they were children or earlier on, they've just not really received the type of healing and therapy that they need to get over those situations. So they continue to make poor choices and continue to stay in that lifestyle, either out of necessity, they call it survival sex sometimes, because that's the only thing that they know or the only thing that they feel worthy of doing. And so we help them realize that they are worth much more than that, and they can learn other ways to support themselves. So that's during our 1-year long-term program. And then from there, we realized that they still need more help to get back on their feet, to be stable and independent. And so we provide that extra year of transitional living where they can live in one of our homes, have a moderate amount of accountability. When you think like a halfway home, but it's not really a halfway home, but it's that they have someone there that they have to make sure that they're going to appointments, make sure they're going to see their therapist, having, go into groups or whatever it might be that they need, as well as then just being there to process the day with once they're out working or they're going to school, whatever they're doing as they're rebuilding their life. These are just some of the services that we will provide within our emergency home. Again, it's temporary housing up to 90 days. They receive therapy, they receive education on whatever it might be, trafficking, substance abuse, violence, medical dental care, job placement, job search, health and wellness programs. We are there to advocate for them, to help them in like case management type situations, help them get to, again, doctor's appointments or things that they might need transportation wise, but really there to help wrap around 24/7 services that they may need to get back on their feet. That could be spiritual, it could just be food and clothing, goal planning to help them start with the next steps to reclaiming their life, job skills training, peer support, anything, like I said, that they may need. And it's all individually based because each woman requires a different level of need whenever they come in. And this is really, again, those are our 4 values that we focus on when we bring women into the home. Is we immediately want to provide them with safety. We want to start that healing process by wrapping around these support services. And some of those are, using other services within the community that are already out there. Faith, walking in faith and teaching them, that they do have worth, and then seeing them grow within their recovery process. And that's pretty much it. A couple of questions I did want to just touch base on that came out of the meeting, like Barbara said from the other day with the neighborhood, is, one reason that this emergency housing is need is right now law enforcement is using, again, like I said, the hotels. They put women in the hotels when they rescue them from these situations, and then they have to leave. There's no one that stays there with them. The women get scared, they leave, they run back into the same situation, which is familiar and comfortable to them, even though it's hurtful to them. And so by being able to bring them to our home from those types of operations, we have people there who can immediately wrap those services around them, sit there with them when they're struggling with night terrors, and help them through that as they, begin that healing process and start feeling safe again. We, have worked with the Felician Sisters, and they are very supportive of our program. They have indicated that they very much wanted this building to go to another faith-based organization that's going to help support people within the community. probably 80% of the women that we serve will be ones that have been identified in the Pittsburgh and surrounding areas. As far as the safety of that aspect goes, in the 11 years we've worked with women with Refuge for Women, we've never had an issue with security of anyone coming looking for the women. Part of that is because if we identify that she is immediately in danger, we can move her to another home within our program. So that's why that national model is very unique and very helpful in these situations. We also will be, again, working with the task force. They will be looking at our home to provide any security and safety updates that we need to protect the women in the community, as well as the main thing for doing the zoning piece is that it will be a licensed facility. So as I said, that will hold us to a higher standard. We will have to meet standards and accountability through the state. And so because this property has been under the same ownership for the last, I don't know, 100 years, the only documentation that the city has for us at this point in time is from 1979. So at that point, it was still under the occupancy of a parochial school. And so we need to have that, the paperwork updated basically for us to be able to apply for our licensing. But we are very much working with the zoning. As you can imagine, because of the type of work that we do, we need to have a level of protectiveness around the location. So we're working with zoning for that. We really do not publicize our locations. We have an office address that we use for the address, but that is why we let the community kind of know what we're doing, again, to help protect that security and the safety of the women and the staff that are there. But we also, like I said, have not had any issues with that in the 10 years that we've been operating with victims and survivors. But we will work with them as well to protect that location that, you know, our goal is to stay here long term. We do not have any intention of moving. But if there would something would change and we would move out of that location to protect the community, to make sure that zoning zones it to the point that not just any kind of group can come in that's going to affect the neighbors or the streets there. Our women are very much protected by the staff. And so they don't just typically go out and walk around the streets or go to different places. They are always accompanied by one of our staff members or a volunteer. And a lot of it is they are still scared. So they don't want to be out walking around doing the up and down the street. So we'll typically stay within our property. All of our programming is done there in the home, other than maybe going out to a church service, to doctor's appointments, things like that. And so that is pretty much the reason why we came to the meeting is we do need to have that zoning approval to change the use. Currently, it is listed as a special use and religious facility. Even though we're faith-based, we don't really fit into those criteria and that requirement through zoning. And to be honest, zoning really did not have any idea how to zone us or put it in that meet models that they already have in place. And so they have said that it would be, again, a special use. And then with that, having very specific guidelines as to what that special use entails. And so does anybody have any questions about any of that?
Before we, Barb, do you mind if I jump in real quick?
No, not at all.
First of all, thanks, Teresa and Beatrix. I don't know if you're still in California, but I'm the block watch lead for South 15th Street, 16th Street, 14th Street, and happened to meet Teresa and Beatrix about a week and a half ago because I was being nebby and saw people going in and out of the building. As you all know, that's something that we pride ourselves here. Teresa, Beatrix, you'll get to know the language. We quickly got together. I passed out 120 flyers to the residents of our block of 15th Street and 16th Street, which is as you know, the convent is situated right in the middle of the block, and had a meeting on Tuesday with about, I think we had 8 people, but I've talked to about 20 total neighbors. Amber's here. She's a directly located on the other side. And we were on the whole very impressed with the organization. We gave them a list of 15 questions. You better bet we asked about security, loitering, parking, noise, with the noise that we find in our block not be good for their clients. So it was a good give and take meeting. The one big concern, and Philip, I'm hoping you can help because it did cause quite a bit of an argument in my husband Peter Margatai's architectural office today, is if we agree to this special use, and then God forbid, 10 years go by and this program leaves that building, will a homeless shelter or a halfway house, or, because when you look at property values, and we've been doing our research on this, the property values going down, that does not usually happen in the case of like a domestic violence shelter, which would be as close as we could find in my research to what Refuge for Women does. But when you look at halfway houses, homeless shelters, things like that, there is a property, usually a property, because obviously they're going outside during the day when they're closed. So will that transfer over if that building is ever changed again, or will the next owner have to come for special use?
The next owner would have to submit another zoning application and go through, the whole zoning process and have, their use determined by whether it's a listed use or, a special use.
I would add that you may want to consult with a land use attorney to figure out how this is labeled. I think that will be important. I've seen this case referenced as community home, or a use variance, a special use variance. Teresa said it was a special use in a religious facility. I really think that Phil and I cannot answer that question. I'm not even sure if the zoning administrator can answer that question. But
I know the last 5 months trying to help us determine what it was.
Peter and his firm, they couldn't answer that question either, and it caused quite a big stir during Peter's birthday party. So
Sure.
Are you saying that the client needs, that the Refuge for Women should contact a land use attorney? Or is this something where the city will be making a judgment on it?
So the zoning board of adjustment will approve or not, or deny this request. And this request is for a specific use.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how that is interpreted in the future is dependent upon how it's worded, which is, again, rhetoric, back to an attorney. I don't know what to say other than what zoning tells everyone, that we can't give legal advice, but there are land use attorneys. I think that you could ask our zoning staff for what the specific language is that will be approved. I mean, the zoning code is very interesting. And
Do we not do a deductive look at this and say, what are the other halfway houses labeled as or identified as in zoning? And let's avoid that language.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the other ones that we're trying to avoid, let's look at that language under their special use and avoid that in any way. And maybe carve out something that's unique, that is close enough to your needs, but far enough away from those other words to not extrapolate secondary use, which I hope you're in business forever and we never need to have this. But I totally understand Michelle's and the neighbors' concerns, because I did have a halfway house across the street from us here for for many years. Yeah, for 12 years. And while they were they were better neighbors than the students I have there now. I had less problems with them, but they were long-term people that were in there. It wasn't a traditional halfway house where people were in and out all the time. It was for elderly. So it was a little different situation. But we were definitely under the same concern that it was going to transition to something else. And we had ourselves all lined up. So I understand. And that's what I would suggest, that you seek the language.
Teresa, why don't you and I talk offline about a land use attorney, and also let's just talk about that offline. But I will say that just to sum up the local neighbors, and we've been trying to be very discreet about this. We're not putting it on chat rooms. We're trying to be very discreet. And one of the big things that means a lot to us, particularly some of our older neighbors, is that this is what the Felician sisters wanted, is that this is what the previous owners who are no longer here want to have done with their building. And that, I think, is something that carries some weight with some of the neighbors, particularly some of the older neighbors here. So that, I just wanted to throw that in there. They did answer all of our questions except for that one zoning one, which we can work together and try to figure out. And I don't know, Amber, if you have any other comments. Let's see, I just want to make sure I was texting people. Yep, safety, they have parking, they'll have 6 parking spots. The loitering we had answered, and the safety question, those were the 3 big questions that most everybody had. And we were comfortable with the plan that they have in place.
I just asked Michelle, if some emergency vehicle has to show up, is there a space for them to pull into?
Yeah, that was one of the points that so I don't know, I'm not to belabor this, but 15th Street, our block of 15th Street has been having a bit of a challenge lately. We have 4 homeless encampments up at the top of the street in the railroad. And a number of other things going on. So we actually wanted to talk with Teresa, and we met with their founder as well, and Beatrix, to make sure that this is the right neighborhood to bring the women into. Though if any of you have seen the convent, you know it's solid and a fortress. One of the concerns we did bring up was that emergency vehicles cannot get up the streets because of the cars parked on both sides. Teresa, I don't know if you want to, but basically you explained to us that doesn't usually happen.
So yeah, with our program, having it say emergency housing kind of is a little bit deceptive. So it's not like a ER where there's going to be, police vehicles, emergency vehicles bringing women to us. Most of the admissions are kind of pre-planned a little bit. If it is an emergent situation, like within the next hour or 2, then it's usually one individual who's bringing that woman to our location, and our staff meets them at the door. And so basically, when you're looking at the emergency services and concerns about those emergency vehicles coming into the neighborhood, it really would be no different than, the people that are already living there. So how are the emergency services getting to them if there's an emergent issue?
They park on Sarah and hike up. That's how it happens.
So that's what it would be. We have staff at the home that would be able to help, transport whatever woman, if she would need emergency services, if paramedics came up there to help transport them to wherever the ambulance is parked. But most of the time we've not had any situations like that with our other homes, other than outside your typical normal situations that may happen, so if someone would have a seizure or something along those lines. So it's really going to be the same as what anyone who moved into that property would experience outside of, the typical needs.
And I think the fact that they have a registered nurse, they're going to have a registered nurse on staff during the day. And then at night, they will have 2 people there. There will always be someone there, which is, again, from our standpoint. And we will, as a block watch, we will decide how we will get in touch if there's an issue or if they have an issue, and we'll work together just like we did on the water main break yesterday. Once you become a neighbor, you get included in the block watch.
And that's perfectly fine. We will identify who needs to be and what number would need to be called and notified, as well as, just communication within the neighborhood as well. We want to be a successful part of the community. We want to be there to support the community and to do whatever we need to do to meet compliance of whatever is decided that we need to do. Our big goal is to provide those resources for women within the city who need the help. And it has been identified that it is a great need within the city of Pittsburgh in working with law enforcement.
Thanks.
Teresa, 2 quick questions. Are you affiliated with a specific church, and where do you get your funding?
So we are non-denominational, so we're not really tied into a specific church, but 90% of our support comes from churches. So we do have church partners who support us on a monthly basis, individuals within the churches who support us. This model of emergency housing, because we are going to be licensed, will be funded in a different way than our typical homes are. And we will have that fundraising piece where we will get support through, again, churches, individuals, foundations that support trafficking and human service rights type thing, as well as we will be billing Medicaid for some of the services that we provide, because we do, you know, just the case management and the therapy and the registered nurse services that we will provide there on site, we can bill Medicaid for. So that will be part of our revenue that comes in to provide for our services.
Thank you.
You're
So
welcome.
because of that funding, are you not going to be required to meet fair housing guidelines for design and space layout? Are you not going to have to renovate some of it to be more accessible? And
Actually, that's the wonderful part about this facility.
Elevator.
Is our first emergency house model started in Kentucky. So we are kind of tag teaming off of that and learning all the things that she had to figure out when she started the model down there. And when it comes to Medicaid and all those different licensing pieces. And so that's why we were very specific in looking for the type of facility that we did find, is because it already has, you know, the sprinkler system in it. It has working elevators. It has ADA accessible bathrooms. You know, it already has all those pieces that would require for our licensing, which would require us to have. So that's going to be less change. We're going to be maintaining the structure of the home, the historical, you know, I mean, that home is beautiful. This in itself, they have maintained that property better than any I've seen. And I've been looking for houses for the last 10 months. And so to be able to find one that's already up to code on all those things, they have, you know, come in and inspect it every 6 months to make sure it stays and is maintained up to code. So we are very blessed to be able to find this type of facility to be able to run our program without a lot of that modification that's needed.
Can you speak to the number of women who will be there at one time? And right now, I think, and what the occupancy it was as a convent, and just can you speak more about that?
Sure. So our program, when we designed the emergency house program, was up to 16 women. We wanted to be able to serve more women and get the resources to them. So we increased our other house models are only 6 women. So with the short-term model, we did increase it to 16 women. With being in the city of Pittsburgh and the zoning, there's some requirements based on that. So we're still trying to figure out what zoning will actually allow us to have in the home, but it has been utilized to have 10 women in there for the last however many years. So we know it'll be a minimum of 10. And so with it being that is a stabilization, that ebb and flow, you know, there'll be, you know, maybe 7 1 week, there may be, you know, 10 to 12, the next, whatever zoning allows us, however that top number might be. But it will change a little bit on a weekly basis, but it will at least probably be a minimum of 10.
I just want to point out that there is a use listed in the zoning code for community home. And, you know, if this is not considered a community home, that's, you know, that may be what's preferred by some of the neighbors. You know, community home does include halfway houses. So, you know, if the use is something other than that, you know, then that's, I imagine that would be preferred.
Mm-hmm. And when we do have a lawyer who's working with us to try to determine the zoning, and we have been working with the zoning office since May, trying to determine where we would fall in and how we would fit. That was probably the closest model that represents kind of what we do, but we still don't, it doesn't define everything that we do. So that's why they weren't sure exactly how to classify us. And that's why it's come down to really saying that it's going to be a special use, and we just have to clearly define what that special use is going to be.
And for us as neighbors, I think the big thing that we were concerned about was loitering and the traffic in and out, where a community home, halfway house, homeless shelter, you know, they shut the door. In some cases, they shut the doors in the morning, and those folks all go out onto the street, which is basically what happens with our homeless encampment up the street. And we just, so if that is community home is what is also listed as a homeless shelter, then those words can't be included in this. The neighbors will not, I personally cannot in good conscience say that that would be acceptable. Like I said, we're not worried about you. As we all know, things in Southside change.
Right.
It's
And
the next thing.
our goal is, like I said, is to protect the community, and we will make sure in working, getting the final determination, whatever that might be, will be something that will protect any future use if we would happen to move out of that. But that is what our goal is. And so as I don't know if I mentioned when I presented, but the women that are in our program pretty much will stay in the house. Our doors will be locked again for their safety, for staff safety, just as a precaution. Like I said, we've not had any problems, but that is one of our standard models. And they only leave when they go out with either a volunteer or a staff member who takes them to whatever, appointment they may have or group that they may need to do. There will be there's a little courtyard area between the garage and the home. We will have that area kind of cleaned up, and that will be, they do smoke. So we do not allow smoking in the home. So they will go outside just in that little courtyard area to smoke, but they will not go off the property. And even with that, with the fencing in the back, we will have it to where you can't really see in for privacy's sake.
Teresa? I have a question. Did the notice that zoning gave you to post state what the proposed use was?
So we do not have that yet because of the need to do this meeting tonight. They have changed our actual zoning date that we have to post anything. So it's not going to be till the beginning of November. So I haven't actually picked up that placard that was post. Yeah, so I will be getting that the first of next week, and to see what's actually on there.
Amber, did you have a question?
Yeah, just kind of in lines of that. Teresa, you had mentioned, I think during the call the other day, that a lot of the women that are coming through the doors, they had, like, if they were, using drugs and stuff like that, that they would already have gone through like some type of detox program, correct?
Yes, if it's mostly if it's a medical detox, they will have to go through some type of rehab program before coming into us. If it is not necessarily a medical reason for detox, like if they've smoked marijuana the day before or something along those lines, we will still bring them into the home, but they get tested then that day and every day, well, not every day afterwards, but until they clear it from their system. And then we do random screens from that point on while they are in the home.
Okay. And then my other question is, you had mentioned that patio is a unique kind of shaped patio. When you say you've designated, is the entire area going to be designated for smoking, or is there like a portion where like kind of closer to the street? Because the way it is, kind of everything sits, because the way my house and my courtyard, and then that courtyard, like it's kind of nothing really moves through there because we don't get like the wind passing through. So you said if that's going to be a designated smoking area, I just want to make sure it's not like super smoky, because I think I had mentioned during the call one of the other neighbors, smoking outside and what it was doing in that space.
Right. Yeah, no, we will designate to where it's closer away from any other type of residential part, make it as easily
like closer to this street is what you're saying.
In the back corner where the garage is, and was it 16th Street?
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure of that, because like I said, like the air doesn't really move through there, unfortunately.
Jackie, you have a question?
Yeah, so basically, I think most people on this call are in support of the owner and their operation model. So what are the next steps? I just saw what Stephanie pasted into the chat as to the description of the zoning application. What are the next steps, and whose hands are they in to make sure that the zoning is drafted appropriately?
So when that initial application went in was at pretty much the very beginning of our work with the zoning office. And so that was put in there as a community home because that was the closest model that we could find in our research before applying. So we did have a pre-application meeting with the zoning department, to where at that point we realized it really did not meet the community home guidelines and it would fall more under the special use. So that is why that is on the application, because that was submitted before we had a lot of the conversations with the city and what the zonings would be. The offsite parking is the space in the garage that is part of the property that goes with the convent. But the next step is, once we had this meeting and working with our zoning reviewer that we're currently working with, would be to have that meeting with the ZBA, and that would be in December, which again is where we would post those placards that Amber was talking about in early November, and then have the actual hearing date in early December. And then from there, they would have, to my understanding, what I've learned is 45 days to make a decision as far as the zoning. And then from that point, we would just start working on bringing our.
So to me, it seems like we need to get a land use attorney, and we need to get this language changed before those placards go up. That is because.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There needs to be some sense of urgency behind this. So I'm wondering whose hands it is and who's delivering who's responsible for the deliverable. The future owner operator.
I think that you should probably contact the zoning staff, because they've printed these, placards, and there's requirements for days of posting, etc. And they also don't take direction from a land use attorney. They are interpreting the use that you're proposing, and I don't know that the community gets to choose what the use is called. I think that you have to, I think that you guys need to have further conversations.
But I thought you said that.
With whom, Stephanie?
Probably the zoning administrator. I don't know that the zoning administrator is going to put this in the category that it fits. A land use attorney, I'm not sure, maybe they can sway the board. I'm not really sure. I don't know. It's a quasi judicial board. It's not, they have to base it on legal precedents. They look at a series of go ahead.
Well, what I would say is if you have talked to zoning and the zoning administrator, and it's been determined that it's an unlisted use and it's going to be a special exception of some kind, you're just going to want to reinforce that with them, and make sure that community home is not what goes on any notifications.
So I would say the next step is to find out what is listed on that placard, or what is being planned to put on that placard, because as Teresa said, the initial conversation about the change of use may have been back in May or June. I'm not sure when the application was filed, but if there has been communication, with the zoning staff, it may be something else that we're not necessarily aware of, but something is going to go on those placards, and it'll be going up, sometime in November, and we're close to November. So we need to find out what that is.
And that, like I said, the zoning reviewer that I've spoken to, she had printed up placards that I had not had a chance to pick up. And then we realized we had to have this other meeting and delayed the zoning hearing meeting. So she was able to print them up again the next day. So I will email her and, tell her of this discussion that we've had today, and start from there and see what we need to do. But she's very quick to respond and was able to print a new one up for us right away. So I would say that we'd be able to get something quickly before we print it in November.
Yeah.
But
So
is this more the zoning reviewer or the zoning administrator needs to be weighing in on? Because Stephanie said zoning administrator, and I just
the zoning administrator is like the highest level of zoning staff.
If we're only working with the reviewer, maybe this needs to be booted up a little bit.
Well, you could always send an email and CC zoning administrator, whose name is Corey Lehman.
He's actually been on some of our emails, so
Okay.
make sure to bring it to that attention.
Yeah, it might be in your emails, like the determination. I'm only going off of what is formally online on that link. And that's the description. I don't know that you typed that in your application because the language is so zony.
We had an architect who was working with us.
Right?
Yeah, there was an architect who filed on our behalf, and so that was the language that he put in there. And so we will make sure to, like I said, that was our initial application before we had even had any conversations. Actually with zoning was we worked with the architect, and he said the first step was to submit that application for a pre-application hearing, which we did have. And then it was through those conversations after that pre-application hearing that they determined that it really wasn't the community home and that it would fall under the special use. And so that application just was never changed. And I'm not sure you can update it anyway, but that was, like I said, from that initial application. So I will go back through my emails and just make sure if there is anything already in writing for that, but go ahead and CC the administrator or the reviewer that we're working with, and CC the administrator on that as well to discuss what we've gone over through tonight.
Hey, Michelle, in other
Yeah.
states that I work in, a lot of zoning codes do reversionary clauses. So when we get a special exception upon sale or transfer of the property, it reverts back to the base zoning of the area. And maybe something like that could be put in. You'll have to get an attorney to see if that's possible. I haven't seen that happen in Pittsburgh, other than when you come out of a master plan, an institutional master plan or something like that. But maybe there's clause or case law for that here. I'm not sure.
Okay.
We do have a real estate lawyer that we're working with. And so I will see if they're able to find out that information as well.
I'll actually, really quick, Teresa, I'm going to talk to Peter, because real estate lawyers are great, but land use attorneys are a little bit different. And particularly in Pittsburgh, they have a special expertise of understanding so let me see if I can, let's touch base about that tomorrow. I mean, run it by your real estate lawyer, but if we're going to figure this out.
A attorney in it, I'm just not sure if they do or not on his team. That's who we started, writing up the paperwork with the Felician sisters. And so they may have somebody in that department that does land use. I'm just not sure.
Okay. Well, before you hire an attorney and they go and email the zoning administrator, find out what the actual language is, so that you don't hire an attorney for nothing. Just find out, what is actually being requested. We know that it's a change of use, but what is the change of use to?
But based off of all this, Barb, in terms of procedure for what the Southside Community Council as an RCO needs to submit is a letter of either support or non-support for this, correct?
Yes, and what we would be doing is basing that on what the wording of that special exception or whatever it is that it would be. So that is what during these 30 days, this is what needs to be determined.
Right.
Because if it's, and let's just say, for example, that it's listed as it is on the application. My thinking is that we would say that we are in support of the program. We're in support of Refuge for Women's, purchasing the property, for the purpose that they've indicated. However, we are not comfortable with the wording of the special exception. And these are the reasons why. And so, that's what would go. And then in addition to the letter, there's always opportunity for comment. So, we as a council can, you don't want to repeat what's in the letter, but you can give a little more detail. And then there's also an opportunity for the neighbors to speak also. And you may also want to, say the same thing, that you're in support of what is being proposed, but the concern is what happens 10 or 15 years down the road when, or 5 years down the road when, for whatever reason, the property is sold. And, how do we, we want to make sure that we know, what would happen next. And so they research and base their decision. And they very well I believe they could very well base their decision on what it is that we have said, that, so they're in agreement, and their decision is one in allowing this to go through, but if it goes up for sale, this is what needs to happen. I mean, that's a possibility, I think.
Teresa, is the emergency housing program open in Louisville?
Not in Louisville, it's the one near Lexington. The one in
Excuse me,
Louisville is, they just were donated property to start building an emergency home there. So that will probably be within the next 2 years as
Just-
well. We have another one coming in Las Vegas, probably in the next couple of years.
Just a thought to find out what their occupancy says, what their occupancy permit says from a zoning standpoint. I know it's different, and I know all codes are different, but again, to me, it's one of the things that I don't think you have mentioned is that you aren't just keeping them in the house because they want to stay in the house. You have structured programming during the day that the clients go through. So even when they go out on a smoke break, it is a structured smoke break. They're not just sitting out there for hours at a time. So that is very different than a shelter, even the women's shelter, or, than some of these other. And so I would say that is something really important to bring up when it comes to zoning.
Yeah, so our program, they do, like I said, they are allowed to smoke, but it is, like she said, very structured. They, sometimes when they are coming out of those situations, we don't want to take that one habit away from them that gives them some peace and some comfort, but we want to, again, help build structure into their lives. And so they usually only have scheduled smoke breaks throughout the day. They are not out there together. We stagger them. And then they only allowed so many percentage of cigarettes per day as well. So it is, like you said, they're not just sitting out there smoking. It is very structured within the program. And then our goal is to actually help them to wean off of that as well.
So I think right now, what we just need to know is what would have been on those placards. Had they gone out tomorrow? Had you had the zoning board appointment for, I think it was sometime in November, you would have had to have put those placards out tomorrow. So now that it's pushed back, that it's not, they won't be they won't be put up until the beginning of November, but whatever was going on there hasn't changed. So I think that's what we need to talk about. That's what we need to find out. And then I think I think you're working with Lana and
yes,
and then Corey to say, as a result of the dam, there's an expectation that that there is community input. And this is the purpose of a development activities meeting, to speak to, what the concerns are, and, which could very well result in a change in wording.
Mm-hmm.
But they will then be aware of it tomorrow and not on the day of the hearing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'll make sure to follow up with Betlin and get that information.
And if you, CC me on that too, because I, if necessary, I can chime in.
Okay.
And ultimately, what is going to matter is the certificate of occupancy, and that's where you're going to want, the right use listed on there.
Thank you, Phil. So are there any other questions or comments?
I don't obviously have any questions, but I did want to just chime in. The gentleman, and I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name because you asked quickly and then Teresa jumped in, but just, as far as where we've been and what we've talked about in Refuge for Women, Teresa did a beautiful job identifying, the need, what's happening in Pittsburgh being the number 10 city in the country for victims of trafficking. Additionally, she took you through, the program and how structured it is and the history of the organization, as well as our outcomes being solid in helping this part of the population. that clearly needs help. And so our status is a 501c3. We are a full nonprofit. The only things that will be billed would be the Medicaid piece, which Teresa had described as well. And so the question that was asked, was there a reason behind that? Was it just to understand our financial situation, or was there anything else that I can answer on that behalf?
So that was Frank.
Frank. Yeah.
So Frank, it was
Frank's
probably out of curiosity.
Okay.
But I also think that from my, and I don't know if this is also what Frank was thinking, but Pittsburgh has a tremendous number of nonprofits. We also have a tremendous number of foundations. The fact that you bring money in from other places, I think probably, in my mind, helps me to feel like you're going to be a little bit more financially stable than just a Pittsburgh nonprofit that is going to the same 4 foundations over and over and over again. The fact that you have a diversity of income coming in from Medicaid, individual donors, churches, foundations. I don't know if you go for government grants, but to me, that helps me to feel more comfortable with your longevity than just somebody who's opening up because the Pittsburgh Foundation, nothing against the Pittsburgh Foundation, gave them a $25,000 grant.
No, absolutely. And to your question, I just found out through one of our board members that we do qualify for some government grants, even though we are a religious organization. So that's a huge bonus for my, as far as my goals. And the other piece was just, wasn't sure if he was interested more in just what we're doing for the fundraising. And as Ked did when we were on the call with him the other day, it's my role, obviously, to raise the funds. And so we are having an event on November 13th. It's our first event basically coming out into the Pittsburgh market. And so I could send the information over to you, Michelle and Barbara, in case anybody's interested in attending it, just for, more information, as well as just to get a sense of what we're doing and what the problem really looks like. It's one of those subjects that's difficult to talk about, but that's our job. That's my job, is basically to kind of demystify it, break down a little bit some of the awkwardness, and just be upfront, frank, and answer some of those questions. And so just, you have my contact information. If there's any interest in attending or supporting the event or the organization, I'd be happy to speak to anybody at any, your convenience. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Beatrice.
I just have a quick question. Teresa, are you part of the national, and Beatrice, are you local, or what's your responsibilities?
And we're both part of the local. We are a Refuge for Women Pittsburgh. And then we do have kind of the model is we have a national organization, which has a national governing board. And then each location where we have a presence, so those states that I mentioned on one of the slides, has their own local advisory board, and then has their own local staff there. So we have a national model, where we follow national policies and procedures and the national brand, but then we each have local touch in our community. So we have members of our board are from Pittsburgh, or we have a couple still from Ohio, where we were in Ohio. So Beatrice and I are employed through the Pittsburgh site.
Great, thank you.
Okay, you guys made it. You guys made it through to the end. So again, I think we're going to have to work very closely together over the last month. There may be additional comments, since many of those may come through Michelle, and she certainly can share them with me. And then we'll be indicating our support to or pieces, what it is that we need to have in order to completely support the project. And others certainly can provide comment to the zoning board themselves. And I think everybody on this call, other than Teresa and Beatrix, if you go to the next slide, Phil, that information, about this, this meeting will be on our, YouTube page. We, speak about our projects on about the registered community organization and the dam at the Southside Community Council website. We do have newsletters, and then our next dam will be on November 18th, 2021. So if there's nothing else, I'd like to thank everyone, Stephanie, Joy, and Phil for your facilitation, and everyone else. Those of you that are still with us, thank you very much. And again, Teresa and Beatrix, thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you very much. Our pleasure.
All right.
Thanks, Ed. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.